Okay, today I want to talk about Lydia Tooley Whitlock. She's been interviewed by Patino of Ashes TV, which is a podcast. And I've talked earlier about the problems I have with how Patino conducts her podcast. Basically, she doesn't do any background research. She simply comes into a community, goes around and talks to people. Then she editorializes afterward, and her editorializing is not really based on any facts. So she interviewed, when she came in, she makes a big deal for about 15 to 16 episodes, putting them out there, advertising them as true crime. So already she says that KJ was murdered. She says, we uncover the truth, as if the truth has never been uncovered. She says, one of the episodes is about how the Kendrick Johnson family had to prove that they were in fact good people. Well, let me show you one of the reasons why nobody in Valdosta believes anything that comes out of their mouth. Okay, Lydia Tooley Whitlock, she's the aunt of Kendrick Johnson. She's the sister to Jackie Johnson. Their father is Eddie Tooley. Eddie Tooley is friends with Tony Harrington, who is the owner of Harrington Funeral Home that the Johnsons chose to conduct the preparation of their son's body for the funeral because they wanted an open casket. And I've talked about why his face looks like that and the lies that the Johnson told about him being found in that state. And in fact, they blew up a picture on a poster board of his face after it had been autopsied and carried it all around the county, all around the country to different rallies and said this is how he looked when he was beaten. And so people who come to this story without knowing that, they automatically assume that the investigators totally discounted the appearance of his body. His body didn't look like that. Back to Lydia. She, as the sister of Jackie Johnson, after KJ died, the Lowndes High students and their mothers and a local black minister named Reverend Darren Neal held a prayer vigil at the Lowndes County Judicial Complex. Lydia and her sister Jackie drove through the parking lot with their cameras and took photographs of all of the children and the minister and the mothers and the deputies and city police officers. The police chief was out there. I don't think the sheriff was out there, but Stride Jones, his chief deputy, was there. And many deputies, and there were also unmarked police cars driving around just to keep an eye on things because of the vitriol that was primarily being propagated on social media by the Johnson family and their trolls. And here's one example. So in addition to taking the photos of the children, they plastered them all over social media and they captioned them with the words murderers and lower than whale shit and other nasty things that you could say about a child, which just floors me. But Lydia took it further and she got on her Facebook page, and you can find this documented in an Orlando Sentinel article by David Whitley. And I believe it was written in 2015, and I'm not sure, and I don't subscribe to the journal, so it's behind a paywall. But she says, whack-ass Klan rally, the little hellion, meaning Brian Bell, didn't make it into FSU because nobody wants to be connected to his kind. Later on, they go after Reverend Darren Neal. They also went after Reverend Floyd Rose. At that time, he was the president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. They called them Uncle Toms. They use this kind of language to refer to white children at a prayer vigil from the high school where their son died. And they also got the mothers and put them up there. And one mother in particular that they went after is named Susan Moody. And she's talked about this repeatedly publicly, but they started calling her place of work and using this kind of language. And she subsequently lost her job because the boss was afraid of what these crazy people would do to his business. The only reason they targeted her and her son was because her son was on the wrestling team, and her son told investigators, yes, our bus left around I think it was around 12:30, but the bus was an hour away when KJ is last seen alive. Therefore, none of the wrestling team members could have had anything to do with KJ's death. But that didn't stop the Johnsons and their attorney Shaveen King from getting out in public and accusing the wrestling team of being part of his murder. So when Mrs. Whitlock made this statement, believe it or not, she was a substitute teacher at Valdosta City Schools. When the school board saw this statement, she immediately lost her job as a substitute teacher. Unfortunately, I think she's been picked up as a substitute teacher in surrounding counties. Now, as a white parent, would you want a woman like this being in charge of your child's classroom and supervising your child? As a black parent, you probably wouldn't want this person because they are so undisciplined and out of control with their public words. Why would you want this person being a teacher in your child's school or even being a babysitter in your child's school? You would not. Okay, so up until this point, I had no relationship whatsoever with Lydia Tooley Whitlock other than seeing this thing on social media and saying she does not need to be a substitute teacher at any school system. So then she decides to go after my daughter. And I don't know if they were going to accuse my daughter of being part of the murder conspiracy, probably, but they found a child's picture, and I don't think it was my daughter's, because my daughter is safely out of state now. And when KJ died, my daughter was in middle school, so she couldn't possibly have had anything to do with anything at Lowndes High School, and my daughter went to the city schools, not the county schools. So she decides to go after my daughter with the help of this guy, Jay Williams. I don't know who he is. He's been a troll for 9 years, and he just gets out there and says wackadoodle stuff, basically just parroting what the Johnson family says. So she made it personal by going after my daughter. She helped get a white woman fired whose kid was on the wrestling team. She got out there and said this kind of stuff while being a substitute teacher in the school system. So Ash Patino didn't know any of this, and there's no excuse for her not knowing any of this because someone in our camp reached out to Ash, and instead of talking to him, she immediately said, "You must be part of the murder conspiracy. You must know something about who did it." So just be advised, if you want to sit down with Ash Patino, she doesn't do her due diligence. She's lazy. She comes to our town and she pretends to have an agenda of the truth, but she conveniently leaves out all of the background for what led people to this point in time. Apparently, she never took a science class because in science, you are supposed to take all the different data points and analyze them and reach a conclusion. And if you just go to one data point and analyze that absent the context of how that data point was documented for history, then you are going to have a myopic, a biased, and a one-sided view of what's going on with a complicated case like the death of Kendrick Johnson. But back to the language that the Johnsons use, not only do they use racist language against white people. I think I told you they call Reverend Darren Neal and they call Reverend Floyd Rose Uncle Toms. So they use racist, bigoted language against white and black people. They don't believe anything that any person in any position of authority, and believe me, a reverend and a president of the NAACP and a president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference have been elected by their peers because of their character and integrity. And for this woman to call the people who investigated this, who were black leaders in our community, to call them those things, that is just shameful. Shame on you for going after the kids. Shame on you for going after the black leaders in our community who stood up to the Johnsons. And shame on you for going after a little middle school kid, honest to God. So, Ash Patino, shame on you for giving this woman another platform.